Hey there riders, Kris from mcnews.com.au and I'm here at the launch of the Husqvarna 401s. Let's talk the Vitpilen 401. This bike has changed quite drastically compared to the outgoing model because we no longer have the clip-on bars. They've brought the two bikes closer together, but let's have a look at the Vitpilen in more depth.
Vitpilen, or the white arrow in Swedish, is the yang to the Svartpilen's yin, hence the white livery, and notably with the previous generation bikes there was more of a gap between the two machines, which were previously quite unique indeed. For 2024, the greatest success of the Spart has won out, from an ergonomics perspective anyway, bringing the Vitpilen more in line with its sibling and no doubt the greater market appeal. Sports bikes out, naked bikes in, or in the case of the Vitpilen, the old cafe racer with clip-on bars just couldn't draw in riders the same way. That's sad when we consider that a fairly unique offering is disappearing, but the new Vitpilen is the better beginner machine for the vast majority of riders and should attract far more riders. Could you do a clip-on mod to regain the old ergo? Probably, with enough effort. The bike is enormously improved in the new edition, being 90% new, but rather than just regurgitate the spec sheet, I'll stick to the ride impression and where those improvements really came to the fore. Jumping on board, as far as bike feel, we've got a more typical naked bike layout. 820mm seat height, wide bars, fairly easy reach to the ground, for me at 180cm with 32-inch inseam. Comfortable, sporty but relaxed, a good seat despite looking very low profile in design, great vision through those mirrors. The bike feels a bit more substantial than the last generation. Instead of being tall but squat or quite short front to tail, the new 401s feel like a bigger bike, more like say a 500 or 650cc class bike I'd say, and don't have that squat feel to them. Seat height is also slightly shorter, which definitely works, but won't have much larger riders stubbing a toe at the ground in the manner that some of the really small bikes can leave you feeling. The TFT dash is nice and clear, left switch allowing for easy access to the various settings, there's adjustable levers and a nice light clutch action. Likewise, throttle open is smooth and well fueled, fairly gentle and a bit doughy on that very first throttle open, making for a very forgiving machine to get moving, which was certainly the case taking off before developing into zippy, rev-happy performance. Having done the first half of the day on board the Svartpilen, moving across to the Vitpilen was naturally more of the same, with plenty of sweeping twisties, some tighter twisties, and eventually the run back through the more suburban roads. You can essentially consider this a tweaked version of the Spart with road rims and rubber, and the bike retains the light and responsive character as a result. A punchy, revvy and linear single cylinder leads the roster. KTM and by extension Husqvarna have had a great little 373cc engine going for them for quite a while, but the new engine bumps that up to 399cc and is a much better option. The big advantage being refinement rather than performance gains in my mind. Both from the perspective of someone who's been riding for over a decade and likes small capacity machines, but I'd also say for new riders too, who will appreciate better fueling, a more forgiving throttle open, and better store resistance as a result. A slick 6-speed gearbox is matched to the shift assist system that makes the clutch optional after first gear, and that system works better when riding aggressively, which was the vast majority of our test loop on both bikes. The new power plant is significantly smoother, feeling less frantic than the outgoing engine, which means punching through that rev range and revving out that engine is just a bit more rewarding, bridging much of the gap to the parallel twin competitors who generally offer smoother running and an advantage cruising on highways in being just more comfortable sitting at speed from an engine feedback perspective. There's nominal performance gains on paper, but it was all feel and usability gains to me. The new Vitpilen 401 will also cruise at freeway speeds of 100, 110, 120, 130 kilometers per hour of course, equally comfortably, where on my previous model the high revving nature drones annoyingly in those conditions. It's not necessarily vibey, but it's just not as good. You still want to use the gearbox actively to get the most of that performance, but there's good torque throughout. I did see 150 on the speedo, someone else mentioned 160. You'll almost certainly be in 5th or 6th at over 100 kilometers per hour if you're just cruising along, but there's good pull at lower speeds from lower revs too. Overall, a very usable engine at practically anywhere in the rev range. We didn't have much in the way of stop-start urban traffic, but I'm assuming the good fueling will carry through and also help here. So yes, the engine will obviously still be revving quite hard at highway speeds. You aren't going to be sitting at 3000 RPM like some people prefer on the big bikes, but let's be serious, this is a 400cc single, and for that the bike seems exceptional. Now there's street mode, your regular ride mode, and a more restrained rain mode which softens the power delivery, both backed by cornering ABS and traction control, with the TFT display offering an easy to use dash that has a very intuitive interface. Fair to say electronics are probably overkill on a 400cc in some ways, but still welcome, and once you've got ride-by-wire there's just a tipping point where it just makes sense to go the full hog. For most people that will just be running street mode and hopefully not needing the ABS or traction control. If you're young and dumb, you'll likely get your money's worth out of both of these features. Chassis updates also play a big part in making for a better machine. Brakes may be a little bit more contentious than the other updates though. I felt like the bite on the brakes was softened, meaning initial braking action delivered less power, with a more forgiving lever feel that did away with some bite overall. There was still good feel and power, but in a less aggressive form. The front brake is now on the right of the wheel and still runs the 4-pot caliper, but the system is a little more forgiving overall. Now that works for me personally, as I'd rather more usable brakes, especially for general conditions, with the rear good for low speed control and stability at speed, rather than outright bite and power. I'd guess a change of pads would return more of that bite though, if you prefer the more aggressive loadout. That ties into the top tier suspenders provided by WP, with Apex USD forks including rebound and compression adjustment, ensuring great support and control for my 75 kilo weight, compliant and sporty. The rear is the same, also WP, with preload and rebound adjustment. The adjustment mirrors the previous version, but adjustment is now done in fewer but larger clicks. Is this the best loadout in class? For me, at 75 kilos, I'd be strongly inclined to say so. Now, the Vitpilen 401 wasn't quite as compliant as the Svart, although some of that no doubt was due to rougher road conditions at the end of the day. There was no mention of different underlying settings between bikes that I caught anyway, and I was able to check the fork settings and rear rebound, which were the same across both bikes. The rear preload I wasn't able to check, but you do have a very wide amount of adjustment here for a sub 10k bike. In fact, adjustment is impressive if we look up to 15k bikes, and that's in Aussie dollars of course. And I'd also say the suspension performance and feel is amongst the most impressive up to that price range. Certainly a step up over my 21 model at both ends and overall, and that was a bike that I rated very highly to start with. Stability is the huge winner on the new models too. A tiny increase in wheelbase along with a new frame and swing arm really sorted out the 401s, which were a little bit flighty in the past with razor sharp handling. That flightiness to me was gone, whether we're talking lent over in the big sweepers or really opening it up in a straight line, and the razor sharp handling remains, although I found the Vitpilen a little slower on turn in at speed than the Vitpilen, despite running the pure road rubber, which kind of surprised me. This was only really noticeable at speed and was offset by me shifting my weight around the bike a little bit more actively. In other words, moving across the seat quite a bit more. So if you like getting a knee out, I feel like this is the obvious option of the two bikes. I was occasionally getting a toe down on the Vitpilen too, surprising me compared to the Svart, with little to separate the two bikes, meaning I was just carrying more lean angle and probably not even noticing it. And the Michelin Power 6 rubber there was very much up to the task. Good feel, predictable, sticky. All our riding was of course in the dry. Handling is a standout overall, well balanced and supported, stable on the side of the tyre, forgiving and confidence inspiring. Learning to trail brake as a new rider on one of these bikes will be very easy and really rewarding. While obviously in Australia this bike will be largely aimed at new riders and inarguably offers one of, if not the most decked out machines in the class, thinking more internationally these are also aimed as a premium larger capacity option where 125 to 250cc machines are much more the norm. Here I think the Vitpilen, like the Vitpilen, particularly delivers and should be rewarding for older or more experienced riders who hold higher expectations in a machine. So whether the appeal is the lightweight, the more affordable on-road costs and insurance, being able to ride a small bike harder, or just feeling a little safer about the license when it comes to cracking the throttle, the 401s deliver. There's ample performance here if you're not too fussed about going past 150 km per hour, I reckon, and you get there pretty quick too. Now I did personally prefer the look and feel of the Vitpilen rather than the Vitpilen, but I also bought a 2021 Vitpilen 401, so that's probably not much of a surprise. I think it would be a harder choice picking between the 2024 models though, as I could potentially just swap the tyres on the Vitpilen to Rally STRs, and while you'd lose the spoked wheels of the Svart, you're no longer worrying about tubes, which on the road is actually a plus. I do also like the styling on the new bikes, which have apparently been quite polarizing, but this time mainly for riders who really like the old design and aren't as fussed about the new bikes, feeling they're just a little bit bland in comparison. Now you like what you like, but I will say objectively the finish quality and detail work on the new bikes are just much improved. I didn't really have a chance to see the bolt quality, which will be noticeable doing work on your own bike, but I'm hoping these are likewise improved here over the earlier gen bikes.
Okay, riders, so that is a wrap of the Vitpilen 401. It wasn't quite as much of a favorite as the Sparkpilen, which I've also done a video on, so check that out if you haven't already seen it. However, this is a really cool offering. Again, really competitive. A lot of features that you just don't find on most beginner or lambs motorcycles, and it has very unique styling. It's a really cool machine. Go check one out. If you've got any questions about this specific machine at all, let me know down below in the comments and I'll be happy to help if I can.